Suicide bereavement as a parent feels unimaginable. Welcome back to another episode of Irrepressible, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Resilience. And in this episode, I talk to the incredible Jenny Rayner. Jenny lost her daughter to suicide in 2012, and then since then has been on an incredible journey. In this short interview, we look at how Jenny moved through that, the resilience she had to show, and what her life looks like today. Jenny has gone on to set up the Lucy Rayner Foundation, an incredible charity that is an absolute powerhouse in the space of helping and supporting children and people in general in their mental health. This interview is incredible. There's going to be so much value in it for you, and I really hope you enjoy it. If it's the first time you've ever been here, then make sure that you've subscribed and you've turned on the notifications so you know each and every time I post a video. And make sure you like this one as well so that we can help Irrepressible to continue to grow. Jenny, my very good friend, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Really, really good.
Good, and it genuinely means a hell of a lot to me to have you on this resilience with me today. So before we get started, why don't I let you tell everybody who you are and what you're doing in the world today?
Okay, so I'm Jenny Rayner and I run the charity. I'm the CEO of the charity called the Lucy Rayner Foundation. And the charity basically raises awareness of the signs and symptoms of mental health in young people. And we do that through education, training, and a lot of fundraising events.
Yeah. And I've done some stuff with the Lucy Rayner Foundation, and I can, like, from my perspective, I always say you're like a powerhouse of a charity. There's no obviously there's awareness raising, but what you do is real action. Yeah. It's like, let's raise awareness of the issue and let's create some things that can kind of solve the problems that we see, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know me. I
Yeah.
feel really passionate about the whole thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes I don't even think about the things that I do. I just have the idea and then I just run with it.
Yeah. And everything.
And the magic happens.
And it is magic. It is magic. When any Lucy Rayner Foundation event that I've been at has not just felt life-changing when I'm there, has actually genuinely changed my life.
Yeah, but I just think there's passion behind it.
Yeah.
And if there's focus and a drive, there's a change that happens. You can't go wrong.
No, exactly. And look, we connected a while back. We were at some training together or something when we first connected. And I want you to, if you don't mind, sharing some of the adversity that you faced, what you've faced that's meant that you've had to be resilient in the way that I know you have.
Yeah. So my story is that my daughter, at the age of 22, decided to take her own life. And it was something that we weren't aware that she was struggling. And so when she ended up taking her life, it was like a massive shock for me and my family. Our whole world really crumbled. And it was trying to find our way back from that. And to a certain degree, the resilience came in where I had to find some kind of ground in which to stand, because it was like quicksand and I was slowly going under. I had a family, I had two other girls who I had to support. My husband was going through a really bad time because as a dad of a young teenager, him and her were really close in different ways to what me and her relationship was. And he really struggled with her loss. So he lost his way. Yeah. He would drink. And so it was left to me to kind of like pull the family together and to support everybody, but still finding way to support myself as well. At times I didn't do well. But the fact that I had everyone else's support meant that I had to kind of really dig deep and find that strength. But in my working life, I was a sales director in a publishing house. And after the period of the compassionate leave, I had to go back to work. And I really struggled in going back to that life, being the high-powered corporate person. But I had to go back because my sales team was struggling. And I had to go into work and be that person to motivate and drive the sales team to build them back up again. And that for me was a real struggle. So when they said to me, you needed to come back, I wanted to leave. And they said to me, because you're a director, there's no way you can leave like now. You have to work off your notice. And my notice period by contract was 3 months. So I had to go in there every day and find my replacement, but at the same time drive the sales force as well to pick up. That was really hard for me.
Wow.
Because I then had to be another person. I couldn't show my grief. I couldn't cry in front of them. I used to leave that person, that real me, at the door. As I walked, I became the sales director. Now, is that coping or is that resilience? I think to begin with, it was coping because I had to act it out first. And then as time went on, I was able to perform the way that I was meant to perform. At the early stages, I used to go into work, and then at home, I just used to cry. I used to get into the bath at the end of the day and just cry. And then as the months went on, that stopped. And having the charity, because at the same time, I was looking at my exit, what I was going to do when I left. So that gave me a lot more strength, because I was then planning on making the Lucy Rayner Foundation a bona fide charity to bring it to charity status. It was a community fund at the time, and we'd raised quite a lot of money from her memorial, but I wanted to change it into a charity that would help loads of young people. So that became my focus. And in having that purpose and having that focus, I found my resilience. And so I was able to dig deep.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, when you talk about the kind of coping that you were doing at the beginning, I think you do, like, whenever I deliver resilience training, I always say we need to be able, in them situations, you haven't got any choice but to cope, right? But you would do, for me, even when I hear you speak there, the crying that you were doing in the evening, for me, is where your resilience was coming in, because that was like the emotion coming out, right? And so often we think that the crying is a point of failure, or it means that we're struggling, when actually I think in a big way that was you processing. How long did you get off for compassionate leave?
I think it was 6 months. And the company was a good company.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it was a family-run company, and the couple had lost their daughter the year before to cancer.
Wow.
And me and the other director had we'd held that company in place whilst they were doing their grieving. And they returned the favour.
Yeah.
But I always knew that it wasn't going to go on indefinitely. I had to come back at some point, but I soon quickly realised I didn't want that life anymore.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter had died, and part of my guilt was the fact that, was I always available to her? Was I always there to listen to her? Because as a sales director, and you know, we did conferences, exhibitions and magazines and online stuff, I travelled a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd be away for a week at a time, you know, to some event or other that we were running. So part of my guilt was I available? Was I there for her?
Yeah. And how did you deal with that? How did you process those feelings?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think part of it was she left us a letter. And in her letter, she exonerated all of us. And, you know, she said that, you know, we're the best parents. This was something that she wanted to do. None of it was our fault. It's her decision alone. And we might call her selfish, but actually for her, that was the right thing. And so I would sit with that letter and I'd think about it. And I would think, it's her life. It's her decision. I can't take on her decision. If I did it, it's just too much.
Yeah.
You know, I can only take responsibility for myself, for my decisions, and how I live my life moving forward. And so, in coming to terms with that, I decided that I wanted to give back all the things that maybe I couldn't have done for her, because I had no knowledge about mental health. I didn't even know who Minds were. I didn't know who the Samaritans were. So I thought, if I don't know, there must be so many other people that don't know.
Yeah.
And so I want to arm myself with that knowledge. And with that knowledge, I can arm or support or educate other people to get that knowledge, because we all have mental health.
Mm.
We all need to recognize what those signs and symptoms are so we know what to do about it.
Yeah.
I didn't do.
Yeah. And so from that, the Lucy Rayner Foundation was born, right? And I can even I can set, and I like dry my eyes a little bit. I can sense even the change in your voice when you talk about the loss, and then you move to what's been born out of that, and your grit and your determination that comes with immense compassion and love in the way that the Lucy Rayner Foundation does. And you know what I think about the Lucy Rayner Foundation is there's like this one side where it's just like power, like we ain't going to take no crap. We're going to make sure that the right prevails, right?
Yeah.
The right thing prevails.
Yeah.
And it's like so loving and compassionate and like free of all of that kind of stuff. The Lucy Rayner Foundation does that like no other mental health charity going, right?
Gosh, thank you. That means a lot from you.
And I think it does. And I don't say that to blow smoke. I say it because it's what I believe. So how, you know, it's 2012 you lost your daughter, Lucy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was, I know that because it was a week before I got sober. Exactly a week. And so in the 8 years, what's happened? How have you built Lucy Rayner Foundation, and what does it look like now?
Oh my God.
That's a massive question, I know.
It is. We've done so much, Josh. So when we first started, all we had was we wanted just to have counselling, because at the time of my daughter's death, she'd gone to the doctors and she told them she was feeling low, and they told it was hormonal. They just gave her new contraceptive pills, and she came home and said, look, I've got new tablets that would sort my mood swings out. So me thinking, okay, it's all sorted. Doctors know what they're doing. She'll get her mood swings sorted. But then 2 weeks later, she took her own life. And so I kind of questioned, do they know what they're talking about? And so when someone goes to the doctors, do they just give them tablets? Why don't they just explore it a bit more? Do they need counselling? Do they need to speak to somebody? How do they talk about how they're feeling? So we kind of did the memorial. We raised something like £15,000, and we took it to the doctor's surgery and said, look, here's £15,000. Can we have like a mental health nurse or a psychiatric nurse at the surgery? And they said, we've already got one. So I'm like, okay, if you've got one and my daughter had come to you, why did you not refer her or do some kind of talking therapy? So I thought, well, if they can't do anything, there's going to be loads of other young people who are going to slip through that net. So we want to create that net. So we thought, okay, we'll do a counselling service where there's no waiting list. Someone can come to us, a young person who's struggling, and we can give them 6 sessions for free. And at the 6 sessions, that should hold them long enough for them to find long-term support. Sometimes that might be 6 weeks, sometimes that might be 12 weeks. It depends on what the counsellor thinks they need. And so it just began as a bridging service. And then from there, we had parents saying, my young kid's doing this. I don't know how to deal with them. So we then began a support group for parents. And then it went on to young people, coffee morning. And then we went on to a men's support group. And then now we go into schools and we do workshops and resilience, some of the things that you support us with, Josh. We also do like a suicide bereavement service where we support families that have been freshly bereaved by suicide. We support them in any way, shape or form that they need in that moment. Because I know that when we were bereaved by suicide, there was no one. We were just struggling. We were going under and there was no one to say, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I see you, I hear you.
Yeah. I see you, I hear you.
That's really important.
I think it's the most important thing. And actually, it's such a simple thing that I think sometimes gets missed in the way that people look at mental health, right? They ignore the fact that sometimes what people just need is to be seen and heard exactly where they're at.
Exactly.
And I love what you know, the Lucy Rayner Foundation does in terms of what you say there. You just go along, you're like, here's the problem. What are you doing about it? And then when they don't do nothing, you just do it.
I don't bullshit. I just say this is what it is. And, you know, I want it real. I don't want to say I can help and I can't. I want it to matter. I want it to make a change. I want to make a difference. And that's why we do these summits called Can Anyone Hear Me? We have young people actually tell their stories. You know, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what my needs are. This is what you're not helping me with. This is what you should be doing, you know?
I love that.
In that conversation.
And that's why the Can Anyone Hear Me conferences are so huge, because they are centered around the children. It's not a, and I've been to some conferences that are to do with look at us and how good we are in supporting children, right? The Lucy Rayner Foundation, the Can Anyone Hear Me conferences are based around these are the children, here's their needs. What can we do? Yeah.
And we don't facilitate it. We have young people facilitate it. But, you know,
and they're incredible. They're incredible. Okay, I can't believe that we've already gone. I think we've already gone over 20 minutes.
I know.
I think me and you could probably do 2 hours, but let's summarize with 2 things that I'm going to try and ask you. Right, the first one is, what would you think on a personal level that you've learned about yourself in everything that you've experienced?
You know, with the death of my daughter, I would have thought if someone had said to me, your daughter's going to die in 2 years' time, I would have said, well, if my daughter dies, I don't think I'd want to be here. I don't think I'd be able to survive that, you know. But actually, it's amazing, you know, what you can find in yourself when the worst thing that you could ever envision happens to you. You know, I'd never thought that I would have that resilience. I thought I would crumble. But, you know, the charity, my family give me that support, give me my strength. And the work that we're doing moving forward gives me my strength.
Incredible. And lastly, I do want to ask you this. What would you say to anybody that you know, that might be struggling, or, you know, this is going to be twofold again, sorry. What would you say to anybody, one, that might be struggling, and what would you say to anybody who might know somebody that's struggling? So like a parent who's worried about their child, for example.
Okay, for someone who's struggling, you know, you're not alone. There is always help there for you. All you need to do is really just reach out, tell somebody, tell anybody, tell them in the way that's comfortable for you. I mean, you don't have to go and shout it in the streets, but you can write it. You can do it quietly, you know, take someone for a coffee and explain it. You know, go to somebody who you trust. There is always somebody that you can tell. Don't hold it, because it just makes the situation worse for you. For someone who knows or someone who is struggling, you can reach out to them. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but if you know them, then you can reach out, ask a question, ask any question. And sometimes they might just give you, oh, I'm fine, I'm okay. If you know they're truly struggling, be persistent. Keep asking questions. And then one day they will say, actually, I'm ready to talk now. Don't ignore it. Don't think that, you know, you don't have that mentality to move forward and talk to somebody. You know, reach out. Nothing that you'll say can make it any worse for them.
Yeah. Jenny, I've taken a breath. Thank you so much. Where can people find, just quickly before we go, where can people find out about the Lucy Rayner Foundation?
Okay, so obviously we're on Facebook, Instagram, website, www.thelucyraynerfoundation.com. Just put us into Google and you can find us. So yeah, reach out.
Good.
If you know, contact us.
Brilliant. And I'll link everything in the comments of this on the YouTube as well. So Jenny, thank you again. This has been as incredible as I knew it would be, and I can't wait.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
You.